What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, something from outside our solar system has stopped merely drifting and has started sending perfect, structured signals directly at Earth? What if I told you that our most powerful telescopes are locked onto it, watching it happen in real time, and that nobody, not the experts at NASA, not the astrophysicists, not the military, nobody knows why? Stick around, because what happens next will shatter your understanding of reality. Right now, something is unfolding in our solar system that no astronomer, living or dead, has ever witnessed before. The mysterious interstellar traveler known as 3I Atlas, an object that has journeyed for potentially billions of years from an unknown star, has just done something that does not just challenge the rules of physics. It breaks them, it shatters them into a million pieces. I am not talking about a small anomaly. I am not talking about a sensor glitch or a statistical error in the data. This is a full-scale, undeniable, system-wide event. This is the kind of event that forces scientists, in hushed tones and behind locked doors, to tear up their textbooks, to burn their models, and to rethink the entire foundation of what we thought we understood about the universe itself. If you are captivated by the sheer, mind-bending mystery of 3I Atlas, and if you demand to know the truth that others may be trying to hide, then you need to smash that like button. Let the universe know you are watching. Every single click helps us keep this search for the unknown alive, fighting against those who would rather this story stayed in the dark. As 3I Atlas continues its silent, menacing journey through our solar neighborhood, telescopes from the high deserts of Chile to the orbital platforms high above Earth are picking up readings that should not exist. We are seeing ripples moving through the electromagnetic field where there should be only silence. We are detecting radiation patterns twisting and contorting in ways that no natural object, no comet, no asteroid, no piece of ice or rock should ever produce. Whatever this visitor is, it is not behaving randomly. It is not tumbling. It is behaving like it is following instructions. It is acting as if it is activating something. You know, scientists are now calling this moment the most terrifying and perplexing discovery since the detection of the first interstellar object, Oumuamua. But this is not Oumuamua. That object was a ghost. It was weird, it accelerated for no reason, and then it vanished, leaving us with a cosmic riddle we could never solve. 3I Atlas is different. It is not running. It is performing. The data does not just defy expectations. It is rewriting them. And as we move closer, minute by minute, to the object's critical, high-stakes approach to the sun, one question echoes louder and more terrifyingly than ever before. What exactly has 3I Atlas triggered inside our solar system? And why does it seem to be building toward what? Because if the signals we are seeing are more than just a natural fluke, if they are part of a larger, deliberate, and unfolding sequence, then this moment may mark not just a new chapter in science, it may mark the beginning of a story far older and far stranger than humanity itself. Let's rewind. Go back to mid-October. This is where the timeline of panic begins. The Hubble Space Telescope, our most trusted legacy eye in the sky, was repositioned. This was not a routine observation. This was a high-priority target of opportunity directive. Its mission, to lock onto 3I Atlas and begin continuous monitoring. Astronomers expected. What? A quiet, dim, interstellar rock. A ghost gliding through the black. They were expecting to measure its size, its spin, its chemical composition. They were looking for data to write a quiet, respectable paper on the chemical diversity of other star systems. Instead, what they found sent a shockwave through the entire astronomical community. The data revealed ripples, not ripples in space-time, not gravity waves, but something even stranger, something more. Immediate. Ripples, not in the fabric of space, but in the local electromagnetic field surrounding the object. These were not random flickers. They were coherent, structured waves spreading outward for millions of kilometers like the deliberate patterns moving across a cosmic pond. Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant astrophysicist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, was the first. She was the one who saw the anomaly, a signal buried deep within terabytes of spectroscopic data. It was the kind of signal you see in textbooks only as a theoretical exercise. She ran the diagnostics 6 times, convinced it had to be an instrument glitch or interference from Earth. It was not. When she called her colleagues, her voice carried a tone of both academic awe and profound personal disbelief. She informed them that they were measuring coherent, structured electromagnetic oscillations, emanating directly from 3 I-atlas. And then she dropped the bombshell. The one fact that changed everything. The frequency. The signal was broadcasting at precisely 1.42 gigahertz. To you, that might be a meaningless number. To an astronomer, it is the single most important, most sacred, most chilling frequency in the entire universe. It is the H-hydrogen line. It is the frequency emitted by neutral hydrogen, the most common element in the cosmos. It is the one universal channel that every technologically advanced civilization, no matter where they are, would recognize. It is the cosmic dial tone. It is the frequency that SETI scientists, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, have been desperately, fruitlessly listening to for over 60 years. They have been staring at that exact frequency, begging for a single, non-natural pulse. And now, Hubble found it. But what made this discovery truly terrifying was not the frequency itself. Natural sources, nebulae, distant galaxies, they all emit at the hydrogen line, but they do so with random, chaotic, widespread fluctuations. It is the roar of nature. What Hubble recorded was the opposite. It was a whisper. It was organized. It was stable, mathematically precise, and purposeful. The question was no longer if 3 I-atlas was emitting. The question was why. Because when something from an unknown star system, a relic from before our own planet was born, begins broadcasting on the most meaningful, intelligent frequency in the universe, and it does so with the precision of a metronome, we are forced to consider the unthinkable. We are forced to admit that we might be looking at the very thing we have spent our entire existence searching for and dreading. The Hubble detection of the 1.42 gigahertz signal did not just raise questions. It triggered a firestorm of panic within a very small, very secret circle of astrophysicists who were cleared to see the raw data. This was not a press release. This was a classified event. The first assumption was that Hubble itself was broken, that its sensitive, aging instruments were finally failing, picking up some stray cross-channel interference from a new military satellite or even a microwave oven on Earth. They ran diagnostics. They pointed the telescope at a blank patch of sky, a control sample. The signal was gone. They pointed it back at 3 I-atlas. The signal was there, stable, unwavering, precise. The hydrogen line, a perfect, coherent, intelligent pulse. For 3 days, this information was held in a state of terrified secrecy. But the universe, it seems, did not care about human classification levels because only 3 days after Hubble's world-shattering detection, on October 18th, the phenomenon escaped the confines of super telescopes. It went public, not through a news report, but through a global, undeniable event that targeted, of all people, amateur radio operators. All across the Northern Hemisphere, from the cold nights of Canada to the suburbs of Germany and the crowded cities of Japan, ham radio operators reported the exact same terrifying experience. For 47 seconds, their receivers were not just interfered with, they were flooded. They were drowned in a wave of static unlike anything they had ever encountered in their decades of experience. This was not the gentle hiss of the cosmos. This was not the chaotic crackle of a solar flare or the predictable pass of a commercial satellite. It was a deluge, a roar of white noise that simply appeared, saturated their equipment, for exactly 47 seconds and then vanished as if a switch had been thrown. In isolation, each report was a curiosity, but when the data was plotted on a global map, a horrifying pattern emerged. The locations of the disturbances, all experiencing the event at the same microsecond, formed a perfect arc across the Earth's surface. An arc that, when traced back into the heavens, pointed directly, like a celestial arrow, at the exact position of 3I Atlas in the sky at that very moment. One of the first to analyze the signal itself was Marcus Rodriguez, a veteran telecommunications engineer from Colorado. He was a hobbyist, but he was a hobbyist with $500,000 of spectrum analysis equipment in his basement. He had recorded the 47-second burst. He was not satisfied with the explanation of solar activity. He ran the signal through a Fourier analysis, a complex mathematical process that breaks noise down into its fundamental constituent components. He was looking for a source. Instead, he found a signature. What he discovered left scientists who later reviewed his data absolutely speechless. The interference, the noise, was not noise at all. Buried deep inside the static, like a watermark on a piece of paper, was a repeating, structured mathematical progression. R sen wu ba shisen. The Fibonacci sequence. Let that sink in. This is not a random jumble of numbers. It is the mathematical fingerprint of life, of design, of consciousness itself. It is a sequence that appears everywhere in nature, in the spirals of our own galaxy, in the petals of a flower, in the pattern of a seashell. It is the ultimate universal sign of order. And to find it encoded deliberately inside a global radio disturbance synchronized to the location of an interstellar visitor, that is not a coincidence. That is not nature. That is communication. Experts around the world, now alerted to the public-facing crisis, scrambled to find a natural explanation. They were desperate. Could it be solar activity? The Parker Solar Probe, our sentinel closest to the Sun, reported a completely calm, steady solar wind. No flares, no eruptions, no chaos. The Sun was clean. Could it be some bizarre atmospheric reflection? A layer of the ionosphere focusing a stray signal? Impossible. The event was too global, too synchronized, and the geometry did not work. Could it be some form of magnetic resonance, the object itself triggering a pulse in Earth's own magnetic field? No match. The physics simply did not align. One by one, every sane, rational, comfortable theory collapsed under the sheer, brutal weight of the evidence. What was left was the truth. This was a signal, a pulse, a deliberate mathematical handshake across the stars. It was not a message of peace. It was a show of force, a demonstration of capability. And whatever it was, it did not end there. Because in the days that followed, more anomalies appeared. Stranger, stronger, and unmistakably, terrifyingly deliberate. As reports of the impossible Fibonacci signal and the hydrogen line broadcast rippled through the black budget world, scientists everywhere did what they always do when the unknown arrives. They desperately, frantically, tried to fit it inside the familiar. The first and most obvious suspect was solar activity. This is the go-to explanation for any weird signal. Maybe the sun was in one of its quiet, unobserved flare phases. Maybe a coronal mass ejection, a solar storm, had somehow perfectly coincided with the path of 3I Atlas, creating a freak, 1 in a trillion resonance. But the data from the Parker Solar Probe, our sentinel flying right next to the sun, was a flat line. The probe recorded a calm, steady solar wind. No flares, no eruptions, no chaos. The sun was innocent. The next theory was the comet itself. This was the sane explanation. Perhaps this interstellar traveler, with its alien chemistry, was releasing a strange gas or exotic dust that interacted with sunlight in a way we have never seen before. A new kind of physics, But comets do not produce coherent, narrowband electromagnetic waves. They do not broadcast on the single most significant frequency in the cosmos, and they certainly do not encode mathematical sequences in their static. Some theorize that the object's magnetic field, if it had one, might be interacting with the interplanetary medium, with the charged particles of the solar wind, twisting and colliding to generate radiation. This was a plausible guess, a good scientific hypothesis, but it failed almost instantly. Natural radiation, even from a magnetic field, scatters. It broadcasts across many frequencies. It is noisy. What we were seeing was the opposite, a precise, surgical, narrow-band signal. Nature does not carve its signals with the precision of a laser. One by one, every comfortable, rational, safe explanation fell away. What remained was a possibility that made even seasoned Nobel laureate physicists deeply uneasy. It was the kind of possibility that whispers from the dark, from the very edge of reason. What if 3I Atlas was not just another wandering rock from another star? What if its purpose, its arrival, its very presence was not random at all? By late October, the evidence had become impossible to ignore or explain away. The object was not just behaving strangely. The data suggested it was responding. Its energy output, the coherence of its signal, the very direction of its radiation, all of it was shifting, subtly, as if it were adjusting to something, as if it were adjusting to US. And that is when the James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful instrument ever built by humanity, saw it. What JWST found would push the scientific world to the very brink of panic. When the JWST locked its golden, infrared gaze on 3I Atlas, astronomers expected, finally, some clarity. They expected to see the heat signature of a comet. They expected to see the chemical soup of its coma in perfect detail. Instead, what they found sent a sub-zero chill through every control room on Earth. The object was not reflecting light the way a comet or asteroid should. It was not scattering it, it was absorbing it. JWST's instruments showed that 3I Atlas was swallowing almost every wavelength of light that hit it, from the far infrared to the ultraviolet. It was as if it was cloaked in a field, a technology designed to drink in radiation itself. Dr. Amir Hassan, part of Webb's deep space imaging team, described it in a leaked memo as the darkest, coldest object ever recorded beyond our solar system. But that was not the impossible part. The impossible part was its thermal signature. Its surface temperature should have been skyrocketing as it neared the sun. That is basic physics. Instead, its thermal signature was dropping. It was getting colder as it approached heat. This is not just an anomaly, it is a violation. It is the exact polar opposite of how physics, thermodynamics, and reality itself are supposed to work. And then came the image that changed everything. Hidden deep in the raw pixel data, after hours of spectral cleaning and processing, a faint geometric pattern emerged on one side of the object. This was not the random, pockmarked chaos of craters. It was not the natural ridges of a cooling rock. It was a series of repeating triangular forms, perfectly aligned, equidistant, artificial. At first, scientists in the control room assumed it was an artifact. It had to be a digital glitch in the sensor, a lensing error in the mirrors, an imaging error. But the pattern persisted. It remained stable in every wavelength. Even in Webb's near-infrared imaging, a part of the spectrum that is nearly impossible to fake or distort through background noise, the geometry was real. Hassan's team ran structural simulations for 72 hours straight, trying to imagine how such precision could exist naturally. No known mineral formation, no astrophysical process, no collision or fragmentation model produced those shapes. The only remaining explanation was the one that the scientific community was not, and is still not, ready to say aloud. Because if that symmetry was not a coincidence, if it was designed, then 3I Atlas was not just passing through, It was built. And as Webb continued its stunned, silent observation, something even more unsettling happened. The triangular formations began to shift, ever so slightly, as though they were reacting, in real time, to the telescope's focused infrared beams. It was a change too deliberate, too synchronized, to ignore. Somewhere, millions of miles away, an object from another star seemed to be watching them back. The world had barely begun to process the terrifying revelation from the James Webb Space Telescope. The images of cold, impossible, artificial triangles were still locked away, known only to a handful of stunned scientists. But before anyone could even formulate a response, before any government could decide on a protocol, a new alert screamed across the secure networks, this time from the Deep Space Network in Canberra, Australia. During a routine tracking session, one of their massive 70-meter antenna arrays, the hypersensitive ears of humanity, picked up a signal. It was faint, but it was structured. It was the same chillingly familiar frequency, 1.42 gigahertz, the hydrogen line. But this time, it was not just the steady, coherent pulse Hubble had detected. This time, the signal was different. It was modulated. It was carrying something. It was carrying data. At first, the DSN team assumed it was a digital echo, a complex reflection of one of our own communication satellites bouncing off the object. They tried to filter it out. But it was not an echo. It was the source. The signal revealed an unmistakable, stunning pattern, a repeating binary sequence. Short pulses, then long pulses, then short again, pulsing at perfect, unwavering intervals of exactly 7 seconds. It was not random noise. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was digital. It was structured. It was, by every definition we have, intelligent. When analysts translated the stream of binary into a spectrographic graph, the data formed a spiral, an unmistakable, elegant curve, identical to the Fibonacci ratio seen days earlier in the global radio disturbances. This was the smoking gun. For days, the pattern kept repeating, as precise and unwavering as an atomic clock. It was not drifting like a natural radio burst. It was not decaying like a solar flare. It was a deliberate, structured, undeniable broadcast. That is when Dr. Elena Navarro, a lead cryptographer at the European Space Agency, was brought in. She ran a complex decoding algorithm on the signal, the very same algorithm she herself had designed decades ago for a hypothetical first contact scenario. It was a program designed to find mathematical structure in apparent chaos. After 12 hours of heavy computation, her computer produced a result that froze everyone in the control room. The signal, when mapped into a visual grid, contained a schematic. It was a form of three-dimensional geometry, and it looked horrifyingly similar to the triangular formations the JWST had seen on the object's surface. It was not art. It was not an alien language. It was architecture, a blueprint. Navarro refused to release the full image publicly, citing security protocols, but fragments were inevitably leaked by terrified insiders. Engineers who saw the partial schematics claimed it resembled a complex resonance chamber, something built to amplify and focus energy through harmonic vibration. Others, with a darker perspective, whispered that it looked less like a chamber and more like a beacon, or a targeting array. The reaction from world governments was instantaneous and silent. The Deep Space Network logs were not just sealed, they were locked behind the highest levels of military classification. NASA, without explanation, publicly redirected its observation priorities to a distant galaxy, a transparent piece of misdirection. And for the first time since the event began, SETI, the very organization dedicated to this search, officially suspended all public reports on 3I Atlas. The silence from the top was deafening, because the implication was unavoidable. Whatever this signal was, whoever sent it, it was not a random broadcast. It was not a greeting. It was not a cry for help. It was a response. It had heard us. It knew we were watching. Then, in early November, the skies went quiet. The radio bursts, the electromagnetic pulses, even the faint coherent ripples that had once surrounded 3I Atlas, all of it stopped. The silence was total, absolute. It was as if the entire phenomenon had simply powered down, the show suddenly over. But deep in that new, heavy silence, instruments across multiple observatories kept picking up something else. It was not a sound, it was not a light, it was a vacuum shift. A subtle, localized thinning of space itself around the object, as if the laws of physics were being bent in its immediate vicinity. Whatever was happening was not over, it was waiting. At NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, senior astrophysicist Dr. Rowan Ellery, a man known for his calm, measured demeanor, called it the eye of the storm. His team, running trajectory analysis, noticed that the object's path had altered by a microscopic margin. It was not a wobble from outgassing. It was a tiny, precise, deliberate course correction. It was a change so infinitesimal that it could not have been caused by the gravitational forces of our sun or planets. It was as though 3I Atlas had just impossibly adjusted its own path. It was no longer just drifting, it was steering. At the same time, the European Space Agency's solar orbiter, a probe designed to look at the sun, captured the most haunting image yet. It caught 3I Atlas in profile, framed against the distant, glowing corona of our sun. The object was a void, completely black, absorbing all light, except for one faint, rhythmic pulse of infrared light radiating from its surface every 12 minutes. It was not random. The timing was exact, 12 minutes on the mark, every single time. Then came the chilling discovery. A young analyst at JPL, running a simulation, plotted that 12-minute pulse against Earth's own rotation and orbital position. The pulse, that rhythmic infrared heartbeat, aligned perfectly every single time with a specific known weak point in our planet's magnetic field, the South Atlantic Anomaly. This is a region long known to NASA where Earth's radiation belt dips closest to the surface. It is a known dead zone for satellites, a place infamous for mysterious computer malfunctions, unexplained instrument resets, and blinding static. It is, in effect, our planet's soft, unprotected underbelly. A coincidence? Maybe once. But not now. Not after the hydrogen line. Not after the Fibonacci sequence. Not after the triangular blueprints. This was not a coincidence. This was targeting. Across mission control centers worldwide, you could feel it. A cold, creeping tension. A collective breath being held. Every scope, every antenna, every satellite, now pointed in unified terror at that one dark traveler between the stars. Because if the object was aligning itself with Earth's weakest magnetic point, it was not drifting anymore. It was aiming. And as that next 12-minute pulse drew near, the data monitors in control rooms across the globe began to flicker. Power fluctuations, static interference, data streams dimming to black. Then, at precisely 12 minutes past the hour, a final pulse. Stronger, sharper, deliberate, and then nothing. The silence returned. But it was not empty anymore. It felt charged. It felt like the quiet, electric moment right before the thunder breaks. The moment the final pulse from 3I Atlas hit, the world changed. It began as a flicker, a brief, almost imperceptible dip in satellite telemetry, a handful of lost communication links over the South Atlantic. Annoying, but routine. But within seconds, it cascaded. This was not a glitch. It was an attack. Entire networks began to collapse. Air traffic control systems over 2 continents froze, their screens populated with ghost signals before going black. The GPS constellation, the very system that guides our cars, our ships, and our military, went dark. Its atomic clocks instantly desynchronized. Power grids across Europe and South America surged, buckled, and then failed in perfect, catastrophic synchronization. For 7 full minutes, Our planet, the most connected, data-driven, technologically advanced civilization in human history, was rendered blind, deaf, and dumb. No data, no guidance. No communications, just static and a profound, terrifying silence. At the European Space Operations Center in Germany, engineers stared at rows of dead monitors, their most robust fail-safes, and redundant systems rendered useless. Yet one system, a single deep space relay node, stayed active for a few seconds longer, just long enough to transmit a single compressed fragment of data before it too was shut down. When technicians, hours later, in the chaotic aftermath, managed to reboot the systems and reopen that final data file, what they found sent a wave of cold dread through every room it touched. The file was not random data. It was not a corrupted error log. It was a map, a three-dimensional projection overlaid on Earth's magnetosphere. At its center, pulsing faintly, was a single point of light, positioned directly over the South Atlantic anomaly, the very same region where the 12-minute signal had been focusing its energy for days. At that exact moment, ground sensors in Argentina, in Namibia, and on remote islands in the South Atlantic began reporting a massive, unprecedented surge in ionization levels. A ripple, not of energy, but of something else, was moving upward through the atmosphere, as if the planet itself had just responded to the signal, as if a connection had been made. Then, NASA's Emergency Communication Channel, a hardline system reserved for astronauts and the White House, crackled to life for less than 10 seconds. A voice, calm but audibly trembling, came through. The transmission was brief. It said, "It is reflecting something back. The signal, it is coming from Earth now." But the strangest, most impossible part? 3I Atlas was gone. Every telescope that had once tracked its every move, every radar array that had tried to ping it, every satellite that had monitored it, all of them now faced an empty, silent patch of sky. There was no object. There was no debris field. There was not even a fading trace of reflected sunlight. It had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. In the days that followed the disappearance, the world entered a strange, cold limbo. Governments, unified in their terror, went silent. Research stations issued bland, minimal statements about solar cycle anomalies. The media, lacking any coherent data, struggled to make sense of an event that had no precedent, and the story was quickly buried. Publicly, the phenomenon was downplayed as a severe solar storm or a cascading communication glitch. Privately, scientists are scrambling. They are terrified. They are trying to understand what just occurred. The electromagnetic disturbances, the directed thermal emissions, the radio interference, even the 7-minute global blackout, they have not vanished. The traces left behind are subtle, but they are everywhere. They are embedded in the corrupted telemetry of dead satellites. They are burned into deep space recordings. They are tattooed onto the Earth's own, now shifting, magnetic field. It was as if 3I Atlas had left behind a fingerprint, a calling card, a message, or a warning. One that humanity is only now, in a state of quiet panic, beginning to decipher. Some researchers, in secure, classified briefings, have begun to hypothesize the unimaginable. Perhaps the object was not just a visitor. Perhaps it was a key. Perhaps it had activated a network that was already here inside our solar system, a series of dormant structures placed long ago by unknown civilizations, waiting for the right trigger, the right alignment. And maybe, just maybe, its purpose was to observe, to measure, to test, to see if we were watching, to see if we were ready. SETI scientists, cryptographers, and military physicists are now working around the clock in secret, attempting to decode the lingering signals, searching for new patterns hidden within the noise. Every measurement, every new anomaly, every atmospheric pulse is being analyzed for signs of intelligence, for a message that could rewrite humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. And yet, the most profound mystery remains. Why here? Why now? Why would 3I Atlas, traveling across unimaginable distances of space and time, choose to interact with our solar system and with Earth so specifically, so deliberately? The object may have disappeared from view, but the questions it leaves behind are far from answered. And somewhere in that blank region of space where 3I Atlas once drifted, faint radio echoes, captured only by our most sensitive instruments, still whisper across the void, repeating the same haunting sequence over and over and over. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. The universe has just shown us that we are not alone, and it has shown us that the solar system we call home may hold secrets far older, far stranger, and far more deliberate than we ever dared to imagine.